I'm Nick Faint. I'm the Programme Manager for the Pioneer Programme at Southend. So where I thought I'd start was just by way of a short update of where we are in Southend. And I've tried to sort of itemise this in bullet form so everyone can just sort of follow me as I go down. At Southend we have a resource issue generally across the programme and within the council and the CCG and the hospital, but it's quite acute in that it has had an impact on some of the areas, particularly so the programme management role. I've now taken over that role, and I took over 2.5 weeks ago. So where we are in terms of update is that I've been busy handing over from the previous programme manager and in sort of listening mode. So whilst it's not essentially halted progress, but it has meant that there's been some, we've tried as much as possible to get a seamless transition, and I guess in some cases that's had a lesser or greater degree of impact. So that's where we are from that perspective. The other perspective is the recruitment of resources within the programme and to deliver the work streams has been very difficult. We're a local authority, and whilst we're just over 30 miles from London, it's not a great place. It's a difficult place for people to get to. People of particular experiences in both the commissioning and the operational world. So we've been struggling to recruit the resources, and I think that's partly on availability, but also I think that's the expectations that we have as a council in terms of the skill that we were going to get. So certainly over the course of the last couple of weeks, I've been trying to understand those expectations and manage them. I'm not sure how similar we are to other Pioneer programmes, but we have a number of work streams. We have 3 key or core work streams running through the programme, and 2 work streams that sit across each of those 3 work streams. The first one is the prevention and engagement work stream, and we have that now defined. We've got owners, we've got work stream leads for that, so we have the definition of what we're trying to achieve in that work stream, and that's sort of seeing that when I arrived has caused me to do some challenge around that, but I think that's quite well, that's advanced, that one. We are beginning to scope the work required within the other work streams, so particularly the commissioning and the operations, and the information and governance and the communications work stream. So the info and governance and the communications sit across the 3 work streams. So the plan is to have all of those do some very sort of specific and targeted activity about defining those work streams and have them complete and signed off through our governance process by the end of June. And I'm not necessarily anticipating a huge amount of issues in that process, other than the sort of the sign-off issue or the sign-off process. We've as I'm sure most of you have similar issues or similar kind of issues, is that we've been trying to manage the issues that are presented from an ever-changing health economy, and that is very much about there's a huge amount of change, both driven by financial and sort of structural changes being delivered within the health economy and their health partners. And more specifically, we've had the local CSU to us, or that supply or that we commission, has decided that they are going to cease, and that is due for realisation in September. So that has caused both the CCG and the local health partners to reevaluate what it is particularly they want from a commissioning work stream, but also a commissioning role and how that feeds into joint commissioning particularly, and what that looks like. And we're getting into quite a lot of detailed discussions about that, but at a very high level. So from my perspective, it's about sort of stakeholder buy-in. And we've got, as I'm sure a number of you are aware, very poorly performing acute trusts from an A&E perspective, and we are, as a pioneer programme, we are looking at the ways in which we can support the recovery of the A&E department. So that's essentially an update on the programme. I think my next slide, if I can just flick over to the next one. No, it's not there. There it is. This is about the challenges that we envisage that we're going to face, and some of them we are facing, and some of them we think we're going to face. So I'm interested in people's views on that. From my perspective, and this is, you know, I've titled these in the governance section, is that it's about alignment of the vision and the cultures. And I think what I mean by that is that you know, we across each of the partners within Southend, whilst we've got sort of quite senior buy-in to what we're trying to achieve, I think, you know, particularly with the regard to joint commissioning, I think there's going to be challenges around just what do people mean by joint commissioning, and what does that look like actually on the ground, and how does that manifest itself, and you know, all of those things, and around culture as well. You know, there's conversations at a senior level about sort of combining back office functions, and that to me presents is a really exciting opportunity, but it presents some real strong challenges that that we need to kind of engage with and make sure that we're addressing. One of the other challenges that I've got, that I think that we're going to encounter from a governance perspective, but also commissioning, is that we've got quite. I think one of the reasons why we were successful in achieving pioneer status was that we have a good track record in innovation and joint commissioning of services, and I think that there is expectations there both at a national and a local level, and I think the challenge will be trying to rationalise what is achievable and building on the track record that we've got, and not duplicating but doing new innovative things. We've got a track record of doing it, so, you know, the challenge is going to be set to continue doing that. The next point is that we've got a very strong voluntary sector. It's very well coordinated. I think there's a lot of issues within the Southend area that the voluntary sector can add value to and address, and I think that we need to somehow, as a programme, harness that in our commissioning activity and make sure that or you know, engage with the voluntary sector so that they are part of the commissioning process for us, so that they, you know, from an operational perspective as well. So that's one of the challenges, and I think that the last challenge, particularly in the governance section, is about balancing ambitions with actually what is real and what is practically delivered. You know, that we've got a real opportunity in Southend in that we've got a blank sheet of paper at the moment, you know, and we need to write down and list and structure out what it is we want to deliver. And I think stakeholders will have the ambition, and I guess it's the programme, or it's the programme managers and the workstream leads challenge to make sure that we don't just write everything down and set about trying to deliver everything around commissioning and joint commissioning. So and we actually weed out from that what we think we can deliver in the time frames, and we make it real, so that people do see a real difference. The challenges that I think, particularly from a commissioning perspective, and whilst, you know, these two are, you know, the governance and the commissioning are, in my opinion, are aligned, is one around approaches, procurement, and resources. You know, the approach is how do we align both commissioning approaches that exist across all the partners, particularly around the conversations that are joint commissioning activity, and how do we help the sort of local economy manage the supply, and how do we manage the demand, and it's those sort of things. The procurement is that, you know, we need to work very closely with our procuring and commercial partners to make sure that what we're saying that we want to commission and what we want the outcome to be is actually delivered through procurement and the commercial aspects. And the resources, and I think this is quite a relevant point from Southend's perspective, is that we're continually faced with budget cuts, we've got legislative changes coming in, particularly around the sort of the social services, the social care aspect, and we've got the sort of the back office functions to think about. So they're the challenges that I think we're going to face from a commissioning angle. I'm not sure if anyone has a similar view on challenges or whether it's something completely different, but if they are completely different, then I will caveat it with saying that I've only been in place for 2 weeks.
Okay, thank you, Nick.
Thank you.
Nick, very, very helpful, kind of wide-ranging set of issues there for us to pick up. I just want to pick up on one of the things you mentioned, which was really around the track record locally in relation to joint commissioning. Can you give us some examples of where you think that's gone really well in Southend?
Yeah, I think we have we have a number of examples. I think one of the examples that I'd like to draw out is that we have a function or a mechanism called the SPOR, which is a single point of referral, and what that helps us do is it helps from a reablement perspective, but it also helps GPs keep patients who would, maybe in other areas go to an A&E department, but it helps those GPs refer the patients who may need some support, medical interventions or social care interventions, but it can be done in their independent living space where they're residing, and it also helps the hospital discharge patients into a supported living space, i.e. independent living. What that looks like on the ground, and it's particularly relevant because I went to see it this week, and it was very interesting. It was really good to see how it worked. There are social care workers, there's occupational therapists, there are district nurses, there are a whole host of resources from across all the partners that are manning the phones, and they get phone calls from the hospital that they've got a patient who had a fall, needs to be discharged but needs some care from a provider, needs some providing care commission, and that's sort of advised through the SPOR. And equally from the beginning of the life cycle, we've got GPs who refer patients to the SPOR, and then their sort of needs are met. I also witnessed or sat in on a meeting where a number of cases were talked about anonymously, and was very interested to see how it actually works. And case by case, these issues, patients were discussed and their issues were talked through, and a consensus was reached across all the partners that were sat around the table as to the next course of action. And what that meant for me is that kept patients who might in other areas be referred to back into A&E or into some other form of assistance. And the whole solution, it did seem to work. It's not been easy, I don't think, in terms of process. I think when they started there was very little budget, there were very little resources, and it's kind of grown, but it was really interesting to see it work. Does that help, Matthew?
Yeah. And that was jointly commissioned by the local authority and
the CCG
and his predecessor.
Yes.
And how's the money flow from that? Does money flow from both of those commissioning organisations? Are there two contracts? There's one contract. How's that managed?
No, it's kind of that's an interesting point, and it's certainly something that we've been talking about after. Cheryl from the innovation unit, our account manager came down to see it as well, and we talked very much about that. It's not commissioned under a single contract at the moment. The money flow is at best, I would say, complicated because it's not that clear how the money flows through. I think there's a bunch of people there that are very keen on making on delivering a solution, and I think they're leaving that side of things to the organisations to sort out. It's going to fall into the commissioning work stream to actually bring together perhaps a pooled budget where you can then actually jointly commission those services, and you can actually pay for them out of one budget. So It's by no means a finished article. I think for me, what I took away was that it is possible, and I think where there's a will, there's a way, and you can actually sort of make it happen. So,
okay, thank you. I'm going to go to Jay. Jay, do you have any questions for Nick, please?
In terms of joint commissioning, has there been a lot of work for the Better Care Fund in terms of moving forward between the CCG and the local authority? Because obviously we're in a similar.
Yeah, I think it's that's a quite an interesting question, particularly given the sort of the national noise around the Better Care Fund at the moment, and certainly the stuff that's coming out publicly about that. I think that we have there is a huge amount of enthusiasm to help to enable the Pioneer programme to deliver the actions that we've allocated within the BCF. I think from all partners there is a great deal of enthusiasm for that to happen. I think the challenge will be, or not the complication so much, but the issue is going to be, as has come out in the national sort of context, about actually defining the benefits around so you've been given this pot of money, what benefits when you've spent that does that deliver to the other partners? And I think everyone's sort of sat on the sidelines at the moment to actually, they've got their own aspirations of what the Better Care Fund is going to deliver, and they may be different to other partners' or aspirations. And my role, I think, is to try and tease that out of our partners and to try and understand where they want the Better Care Fund to benefit their organisation and where it can benefit it, and it's kind of doing the gap between that. So where we are specifically in that is that we have the detail around the benefits that we think we're going to deliver. We need to develop an action plan, a specific action plan about how they are going to be delivered, and just assure each of the partners that when we say a benefit of X amount of pounds, that it actually means X amount of pounds, and this is what it means for you as an organisation as to what you can then achieve with that. So are you in a similar position to that, or are you more advanced? Or
probably a little bit more advanced in that respect, because I'll talk about it in my presentation, but just keen to know where because I do see it as a vehicle for integrated commissioning, and like you said, for the reasons that you elaborated. So yeah, I think you're right. I think what you've said is absolutely true.
Jay, do you have any other questions you'd like to raise?
The only issue is obviously we've come from a slightly different predicament because we've had a bit of priming for our integration, but I think the biggest fear I worry about, our sites, our colleagues like yourselves, is obviously because of the like you said, the kind of funding, the funding spiral that seems to be going ever downward. There needs to be a bit of priming, I think, to get it forward, because some of it needs to be tested, and I think that's the biggest fear, isn't it? Really.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Okay, let me bring in Sue here. Sue, do you have any questions, please, for Nick?
So I just wondered about your membership engagement. Just really, I think that's the bit that we're struggling with, is just really our primary care capacity and our membership engagement. And have you got any bright ideas for that, and what's happened in your area?
When you talk about membership engagement, do you
obviously we're from a CCG, so we're a membership organisation, so it's just really taking them with us, And I'm sure, GP colleague, some absolutely 100% get it, but like any other organisation, there are, the odd individuals that we need to take with us, really.
Yeah, I think I don't know. In my first week, I was asked down to the voluntary sector kind of. They do a get together every month, and it just happened to be the first week that I joined, and I was asked to prepare a presentation and give a presentation on the Pioneer Fund, Pioneer Programme to the voluntary sector, those that were attending. And when I sat down and thought about the structure of the presentation, I thought there's a lot. What's in our favour at Southend? And actually, when I listed it down, there was a huge amount in our favour. And I think we've been this may not give you any kind of answers to your question, but we've been quite fortunate in the circumstances that have been presented, in that we have a very poorly performing acute trust from an A&E perspective. We have a CCG who have been thrown into a position where their CSU has decided to cease to trade. So we've almost been thrown together as partners, and it's almost, you know, the chief operating officer from the CCG is very, very signed up to it. She's very actively involved in the development of the Pioneer Programme and all of the other commissioning activity within the sort of as you would expect her to be, but very much rolled up, you know, sleeves rolled up into the details. So very interested. We've got a very we've got a chief exec at the council who's very signed into, you know, very signed up to this. He's very active in terms of developing. So I think we've got really good senior sponsorship across all of the members or the partners within the programme, because of course when we're in local authority and we talk about members, we talk about something completely different. So we talk about the politics more. So I think that's point number one, that we've got senior sponsorship. Point number two is that we have a set of circumstances that, you know, that have enabled that sort of that buy-in. I think, you know, it's very difficult to kind of to add to that because there's, you know, it's a cultural thing as well, isn't it? It's actually, you know, trying to work out what how the cultures are aligned, all the sort of the visions, and, you know, the strategic, you know, how the local area team fits into all of that and what support they give. And, you know, my take at the moment is that it's quite positive. We are a unitary authority. We have a single CCG. We're centred around an acute trust. So there's other things in our favour as well. But, you know, I understand from other region or other programmes that they're probably not as in a fortunate position, but they'll have other things going for them. So
Nick, can I come in there? Because it sounds like so some of those factors are in your favour. Although in particular when the beginning of your presentation was about the resource constraints and how actually the situation has sort of thrown a lot of the partners together of necessity. But actually getting buy-in from all the different parts of the health economy to this is critical. We've had a tweet from Beth Kappa who says getting all the right people to the table for joined-up commissioning is key, given the stretched resource that we've got. What tips have you got for getting all the different partners involved? I just wondered, Sue, whether or not you could share with us any sort of advice or tips you've got about how do you reach out to the whole of the primary care community and the local authority partners and secondary care providers. Can you share some advice or some experiences?
Well, I mean, I think for us, I mean, we are quite fortunate. I mean, our difficulty, we've got 4 different CCGs in our area, so we're quite lucky in our CCGs. We have some really, you know, keen clinical leads, and they've shown really good, strong leadership this past year, and so it's about us using their skills and their sort of enthusiasm to take some of their colleagues along. Really, I think the thing that's starting to excite primary care is around some of our aspirations around our community work, because they can truly see the benefits of that for them. And for us, that's sort of been a bit of a light bulb moment for them, is once they can see what's in it for them and what's in it for their patients, that then really starts to get them engaged. I think, to be fair to the GPs, he knows there's been a bit of a hangover from the old PCT days, in that, you know, they felt very much done to, didn't they, with the PCT? So it's just really changing that culture, that actually, you know, they're part of that now. They absolutely can drive, you know, the health economy forward. So I suppose from my point of view, it's just putting the effort in about, you know, communicating. I mean, I meet every practice on a monthly basis. It's a nightmare, but that's what I do to keep them on board, you know, and keep them sort of going with me and with our team.
So how many practices is that? Well,
I'm fortunate in Ashford. I've only got 15 practices, so it's not too bad. But, you know, our clinical leads have a bi-monthly meeting with the GPs, just tell them where they are with their programs. We've really invested in the amount of time that we spend with those practices, communicating with them. I would say our biggest. I mean, I think the thing about it's not that they don't want to go forward. They do, but they just can't see the wood for the trees at the moment because everything's been thrown at primary care. And I'd say so. One of our biggest issues is with our relationship between our providers, but I'll come on to that later.
Very good. So, selling the benefits to patients, and selling the benefits to primary care practitioners. That model of, I presume that happens across all of your 4 CCGs. That engagement with each practice on a regular basis.
Yeah.
I wonder if I could bring in Jay here, whether or not you can say anything about engaging secondary care, because this, in particular in relation to commissioning and changes to commissioning for integrated care, have you had any success in BHR?
Well, very similar to where Nick had come from. Our BHR economy in terms of the hospital is in dire straits and monitor, and I think practically everyone has been in to our hospital to say how bad things are. But that has actually given us a vehicle or opportunity to say, look, you can't do what you're doing, you're just too busy. You're not getting the outcomes that you hope to get. You have to do things differently for everyone. And in actual fact, I think our local hospitals actually welcomed the whole integrated. They realise there are some real, I would say, disadvantages for the hospital. But when a system can't cope, and primary care, and I mean primary care as the whole community, are saying that we could do more or do things differently, and we could, look after your patients. I think actually they've been actually quite welcoming, and I think they just need to see, and particularly a lot of the clinical teams, they need to see what exactly you're going to do, because a lot of the problems we have in accident emergency and as well as the wards is the fear of what will happen to the patient when they leave. So I think that once there's a good dialogue, they understand the benefits, then I think ideally they will come to the table and they will come to discuss things. And particularly for our speciality consultants, when you say to them, look, I don't know, I've got a patient particularly with very bad COPD, and we can give support in between your outpatient appointment, or you can tell us what you can be involved with their care plan in the community. Actually, it changes the mindset, and I think there's a degree of cohesiveness that comes with it, because everyone's on board, especially the patient or the carer, because they know exactly what's going on. So it may be that our particular circumstances that has driven us to that, but I see it as an opportunity rather than a negativity.